Imagine for a second that you are the dictator of a new country. One of the first things on the agenda is to issue your own currency so that the population can start transacting and get the economy going. The first problem that you'll be faced with is how many units of this currency to create. If you issue too few units, and if the currency is not very divisible, there will be a problem. The population will simply not have enough currency on their hands to be able to transact properly. It's hard to buy bread at the supermarket when the smallest unit of your currency is worth the price of a car. You can't create a functional economy when the only thing people can transact are cars. In fact, it's not even possible. The last thing you'll want to do is to artificially inhibit your population's ability to transact, because this will affect the growth of your economy in ways you can't even imagine. But what if you did the opposite? What if you issued an abundance of currency, which is also very divisible? Will this lead to inflation? No, not if you do it once. After you initially issue the currency, the population will intuitively and collectively go through a phase of price discovery, and with the help of the law of supply and demand, they will figure out what things are worth. Basically, on the left side of the equation, you have the supply of currency, and on the right side, you have the supply of goods and services that people can buy. The value of your currency will reflect this supply of goods and services. As long as the currency is abundant and divisible enough so that people can buy even the cheapest items, and as long as you don't issue more currency, everything should work fine and they will reach an equilibrium. Of course, the value of the currency will also be dependent on the velocity of money. The velocity of money is the frequency at which one unit of currency is used to purchase domestically produced goods and services within a given time period. If the velocity of money is increasing, it means that more transactions are occurring between individuals in an economy. On the other hand, if the velocity decreases, it means that less transactions are occurring. At any time, there will be people who will spend all their money fast, there will be people who will spend portions of their money while keeping some savings for rainy days, and there will also be people who will spend minimal amounts of money and save as much as possible. Not every unit of the currency that you issued will be circulating in the economy. Money that is not circulating cannot influence the economy, so you need to keep this in mind when issuing your currency, and you need to account for this as well. Also, the velocity of money can change in time, and you need to pay attention to that as well. It might cause serious problems in your economy if the velocity drops too much. Of course, it's up to you as a dictator if you want to let the people determine the velocity of money through their collective actions, or if you want to intervene in that as well. Some economists argue that you'd actually need an inflation rate of 2% per year to stimulate the economy. The logic behind this is that if you devalue your people's cash savings by 2% each year, this will incentivize them to spend their currency because they wouldn't want to hold on to cash that is losing its purchasing power. I don't agree with that, because I've never met anyone in the real world who went, "I better spend my money fast before I lose 2% of its purchasing power." Most people don't even understand how inflation works anyway. The real reason why some economists encourage a 2% inflation is because of debt. Debt is easier to repay when the money is worth less. For example, let's say someone borrows 10,000 units of your currency, which he needs to pay back in 10 years. The interest rate is 5% per year, and the inflation rate is 2% per year. If that person is careful to renegotiate his salary every year to keep up with inflation, but their debt repayments stay the same, it means that every year they will technically pay less. Their debt is devalued by an amount equal to the inflation rate. This makes it attractive for him to borrow money and spend it in the economy today. In theory, it also ensures that the velocity of money will not drop too low. Since most economies in the world are built on debt, a constant 2% inflation that devalues the debt is encouraged to ensure that the system doesn't collapse. This is a highly complex topic, and at some point I'll dive more into it and give you my take on this. But for now, let's get back to the subject at hand. The conclusion from this thought experiment is that inside your country, the value of the currency will be determined by the supply of currency, the velocity of that currency, and the amount of goods and services in the economy. Now let's complicate things further and assume that your totalitarian nation is not self-sustained and it needs to transact with other nations. Let's say you have a deficit of oil and you're looking for a nation to buy it from. The nation that sells the oil will require payment in their currency. Since you're a dictator, your first thought would be to simply print more of your local currency and exchange it for the currency required to buy the oil. Your people will not get to suffer from inflation, since you are not flooding your own economy with this newly issued currency, and they will benefit from practically free oil, right? Actually no, because you wouldn't find a single nation on Earth willing to accept your currency in exchange for theirs. Why would they accept it? In order for someone to accept your currency, they must have a use for it. In other words, there must be demand for it. You now have to create that demand. So you take a good look at your economy and realize that even if your country has an oil deficit, you notice that it's really good at agriculture and it has a surplus of grains. This means that you can export these grains, and the people who want to buy them from you must use your currency. This creates demand for it. Now you can find a nation that will exchange their currency for yours. This won't be hard, since your currency has a use now. The nation that is willing to exchange their currency for yours can use your currency to buy grains from you. Even if it doesn't want to buy grains from you, it can sell your currency to someone else who needs it to buy grains from you. The point is that once you started exporting and created demand, it's easy to find nations or individuals willing to exchange their currency for yours. Since there is demand for your currency, why not simply print as much as you want, exchange it for other currencies, and buy all the oil? As you probably figured out by now, you can't do that. If you print more currency than there is demand for, you'll simply devalue it in international transactions. The market will realize quickly that there is a surplus of your currency in circulation, the exchange rates will adjust accordingly, and it will be more expensive to exchange your currency for others. If before you could exchange 1 unit of your currency for 1 unit of another nation's currency, now that nation will require maybe 10 units of your currency, and the more you print, the more they will require. It can go up forever like this. This will significantly affect your country's economy, because now everything that you and your people import, including oil, is more expensive in your local currency. If the oil is more expensive, this will raise the prices of all the other things that use it, from transportation to plastics to the costs of goods being transported and so on. In the end, you haven't managed to trick anyone but yourself and your people. The conclusion from this is that even in international transactions, once again, the value of your currency was determined by the simple law of supply and demand, and there's no way around it. But let's assume that you are a benevolent dictator, and you have no intention of trickery. You simply want what's best for your people. Since you realized that there is power in demand, you decide to focus your efforts on increasing your country's exports. This would create more demand for your currency, which will make it stronger. It will increase your purchasing power, and your people would be able to import more goods for the same amount of money. This works in theory, and it should bring prosperity to your people, but only up to a point. If you keep producing more goods, but your supply of currency stays the same, There will be a point where your currency will be worth so much that other nations would simply decide not to trade with you, because it's too expensive. If last year they could exchange 1 unit of their currency for 1 unit of your currency, but this year they have to exchange 2 units of their currency for 1 of yours to buy the same quantity of goods, from their perspective, they would be paying double. This can't go on forever, and after a while, they will be looking for alternatives. You'd then find yourself with a surplus of goods that your people can't consume, and with no one willing to buy them. The only way to convince other nations to trade with you again is to lower the prices of goods in your local currency. Unfortunately, you can't lower the prices indefinitely. There will be a point where your people will refuse to produce them because it's simply not worth it. In that case, the only thing left for you to do is to lower the value of your currency by printing more of it. Obviously, this puts you in a tricky situation. If you lower the value of your currency too much, your people will have less prosperity, and they will hate you. If you don't lower it enough, other countries will not transact with you, and your people will also suffer. All I will say is that it requires a fine balancing act, and I'm not going deeper into this topic because it will open a new can of worms about monetary and fiscal policy that I don't want to go through right now. I'll end the example here and hope that this thought experiment provided you with a simplified explanation about currencies and how they work. I'll now give you an introduction to Forex, because at the end of the day, the purpose of these videos is to teach you about financial assets and markets, and Forex is a big one. I couldn't simply start talking about the largest currency market in the world without first talking about how currencies work. So if you're still with me, let's move on to Forex now. Forex stands for foreign exchange. It's used to trade all types of national currencies. There is no centralized location for Forex. It's more like an electronic network of banks, brokers, institutions, and individual traders. In Forex, a currency is always traded relative to another currency. If you sell a currency, you are buying another, and if you buy a currency, you are selling another. This is called a pair. For example, if you're an American and you're holding US dollars, you can sell your dollars and buy euros. If the euro goes up in relation to the dollar, you can then sell your euros and buy dollars again. A profit is made on the difference between your transaction prices. If you traded $1,000 for 900 euros and then the euro went up and now those 900 euros are worth $1,010, when you sell your euros for dollars, you make a $10 profit. Because Forex involves trading currencies and their values don't fluctuate that much, usually the profit margins are small. This makes people use leverage. Leverage means borrowing money to increase your position. Brokerage accounts allow the use of leverage through margin trading, and the broker provides the borrowed funds. Leverage, however, can amplify both profits as well as losses. For example, let's say you have $1,000, but you want to buy $100,000 worth of euros. The broker will lend you the rest of the $99,000 and you can make the transaction. If the price of the euro goes up 1% and your position is now worth $101,000, you can sell, pay the broker his $99,000, get your $1,000 back, and keep $1,000 in profit. You invested only $1,000 and doubled your money by using leverage. Things can go the other way as well. If the price of the euro in relation to the dollar goes down 1% and your position is now worth $99,000, you'll get margin called. I already explained margin calls in my previous video about derivatives, and I won't go into that now. The point is that if you don't deposit more funds to cover your margin call, you'll be automatically liquidated. Just as easily as you double your money, you can also lose it all if you're over-leveraged. Of course, leverage or margin trading is not exclusive to Forex and can be used when trading other financial assets as well. It is most common in Forex due to the small price fluctuations involved and the small profit margins. This incentivizes people to use margin to reap higher gains. Now you're probably wondering how Forex brokers make money. Or maybe you're not wondering that. But I'm still gonna tell you, because this gives me an excuse to explain two very important concepts that will become relevant in future videos. One way brokers make money is through fees. They charge a small commission per trade that usually doesn't affect your bottom line, but it becomes significant for the broker and it adds up when you consider how many transactions are done daily. They can also make money by providing additional services on their platforms that can help professionals in their trading activities. But the most common way brokers make money is through the spread by acting as market makers. These are the concepts that I want to get into. The spread is the difference between the bid and the ask price. If it's hard to remember them this way, you can replace bid with buy and ask with sell. In other words, they make money from the difference between the buy and the sell price. Let me give you a more down-to-earth example that you might be familiar with. Let's say you travel from the USA to Europe. You have dollars on you, but obviously you need euros to buy stuff in Europe. You go to Google and type $1,000 in euros. Google gives you the answer, and with this information in mind, you go to the nearest bank. At the bank, you notice that something is not right. The numbers don't match with what Google just told you. You see that the bank charges one price if you want to sell them dollars for euros, and another price if you want to sell them euros for dollars. In this case, the bank acts as a market maker, and that difference in price is the spread. Basically, the bank provides you with liquidity so you can exchange your dollars, but it will charge you a bit higher than the market rate. At the same time, once the bank has your dollars, it can sell those dollars for euros to someone else at a slightly higher price than the market rate. This difference between the buy and the sell price is the spread, and it also represents their profit and their incentive to provide you with liquidity. The same thing happens in Forex as well. The brokers position themselves as market makers and control the spread to make money. In simpler terms, they provide liquidity and also control the price. Since they have so much control over the market, does this mean that they can set whatever prices they want? Not really. Remember that Forex is the largest and one of the most decentralized markets in the world. Brokers try to keep their rates as close to the market rates as possible because if they abuse their power, they will simply lose customers. They make money from economies of scale and from having as many customers as possible, doing as many transactions as possible. They don't make money from jacking up the prices to profit temporarily and then lose most customers. The point is that you don't have to worry about them taking advantage of you, because that's not their incentive or their business model. That being said, no matter if you decide to trade on Forex or not, it would be useful if you could remember the concepts of spread and market making. They can apply to many financial assets and markets, and depending on the asset, the definition might be a bit different. But generally speaking, you can think of the spread as the difference between two comparable measures, and you can think of the market maker as a liquidity provider who makes money from the spread. Now that we're done with this, there's not much else to say about Forex. There are strategies that I could go through, and I'm sure there are concepts that I didn't explain, like pips. But as I mentioned in other videos, this channel is not about day trading, and Forex is mostly a day trader's game. Besides exchanging currencies from time to time, when I have reasons to believe some of them will hold their value better than others, I don't really use Forex to make money from day trading, and it's not my area of expertise. Since Forex is the largest market in the world, and since I plan to go through most of the financial markets before tackling more complicated topics, I couldn't just skip it entirely. Instead, I use this video as an excuse to teach you about currencies, spread, and market making. All of these concepts will come into play later. Hope you enjoyed it nonetheless, and see you next time.